I recently saw a post by Martin Boyd on the Mag Northern Ireland group Facebook page, which discussed vulnerable road user groups and what the terminology is and why we use it. So I thought it'd be useful to have a discussion with Martin about why he chose to put that post up there on Facebook and why that term has come about and why we use it. Because I know it's something that probably, if you're anything like me, you might not feel entirely comfortable with. Good afternoon, Martin. It's good to speak to
Hello,
you again.
and you?
Um, yes, as I've said, the post is up there on Facebook. I'm sure everybody will find it. I'll put a quick screenshot of it up as well so
Okay.
that people can see. But what was it first of all that led you to put that post up? Why did you feel the need to do that?
Well, it was at our regional demonstration day on 5th of July at Stormont at the Northern Ireland Assembly. Uh, One or two of the riders that had assembled asked, what does this mean, vulnerable road user group? And I explained to them individually. So I decided afterwards to put up a post to explain the term. Initially I wasn't comfortable using it because it does kind of make it sound like we're enfeebled or sounds a bit denigrating. But when you look at what it means, we can actually make it useful. As far as I can ascertain, it's an official designation. In the highway code, a vulnerable road user is anyone who is using the road who is vulnerable, who does not have active protection. Now that can include, for example, road workers. They're on the road, they're using the road, they're doing their job. They don't have active protection, so they are vulnerable. What is active protection? Well, it's if you're in your car or a van or a truck or a bus, you've got active protection because of the inherent design of your vehicle. It has active physical protection for you. Airbags, crumple zones, roll cages, whatever. You've got that on a motorbike or a bicycle or a horse or as a pedestrian or as a road worker, for example. So that's a vulnerable road user. A vulnerable road user group is people like us, motorcyclists, who routinely use a form of motorized transport that is vulnerable because it doesn't have active physical protection systems. It does not mean that motorcycles are inherently dangerous. It does not mean that we're somehow enfeebled, uh, but it does mean special measures are required. And by special measures, what I mean is it requires the authority. Well, it requires the authority and the road user to take extra special precautions for their safety. So, as a motorcyclist, you're expected to ride in such a way that you are taking account of your own safety because of your vulnerability. So it also requires the authority, and in the case of Northern Ireland, that's the Department for Infrastructure, to have governance over everything to do with all of our roads. I know it's different in GB, but it requires them to take measures to enhance our safety, extra consideration for our safety. And in the context of our regional demo, one of the main issues for us is that we don't believe that our roads authority is doing that. So that's how that came up. And I do like to use that designation to remind them that we are a vulnerable road user group. In fact, in one of their most recent publications on the subject of killed and seriously injured motorcycle collisions, they actually say that they infer very strongly that we are the most vulnerable of all road user groups.
I think as riders, we don't like to sort of like see ourselves
No,
as victims, and so we don't want to be seen to be playing the victim card. So I think that it's important to point out that yes, this is this vulnerable road user group, it is a terminology that has been placed upon us. It's not one that we've asked for. It is just a recognition of the reality
Yeah,
of the fact that you're not surrounded by a roll cage
yeah,
and crumple
exactly.
zones and everything else as you are in the car. But of course, what we have to remember is that then gives us a pretty powerful card that we should and can play when it comes to calling
Yeah,
for more interventions to look after us
yeah,
as
exactly.
road users.
We must also remember that there is also responsibility incumbent upon us as riders, as vulnerable road users. You know, it's a two-way street, so we have to be cognizant of our vulnerability and therefore ride accordingly, which pretty much all of us do.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because, like I said, I think most riders recognise the fact that yes, you've got to be responsible, and certainly there's an awful lot of messaging that comes out from government that says riders need to take extra care and get as much training as possible and all that. But I don't know. Do you think that they keep their side of the bargain by making sure that the infrastructure is sufficiently well designed for us? Do you think that's because it seems strange that they will place that label upon us, but then don't seem to do that much in terms of protecting us as vulnerable road users, unlike say cyclists, for example, who get cycle lanes put in for them because they're vulnerable. We've never seen a motorcycle lane put in, have we?
The short answer to your question is no, they don't keep their side of the bargain. Um, for example, you know, we have to recognize our own vulnerability, and I believe every motorcyclist inherently understands their vulnerability, but maybe a number didn't haven't heard it put in that kind of context before that they're part of a vulnerable road user group. And yes, as you said earlier, it can have a connotation of that, looking like we're trying to be victims, which we're not. But every rider does inherently recognize their vulnerability.
Mhm.
As for the authorities, in terms of the infrastructure, no. Uh, Here, I'm trying to get our roads authority to think a bit differently. Uh, Not asking them to spend more money, because like everywhere they cry, we don't have any more money, but to think more wisely, a bit more imaginatively perhaps of how they use it. Now, my understanding of the criteria used here for repairing, for example, potholes is there have to be a certain depth and a certain width before they would even get mopped up as requiring attention. And they can get mopped up with white or yellow paint, depending upon the severity. But what they don't take into account is where is that pothole on the road surface. Uh, as I explained and pointed out on television and numerous letters, the position of a pothole with regard to a motorcycle can be of much more significance than its physical severity. It can be on that perfect line for a motorcyclist going around the bend, and it may not fit the criteria for immediate repair, but it could be lethal or very seriously hazardous. But they do not take into account where it is on the roadway. And they told me that they don't take it into account. And I pointed out that many not much more minor road defects can have a very hazardous influence on motorcycles, but they're not required to be attended to. And our point is that we believe that if a road surface is safe for a two-wheel vehicle, then it's safe for every kind of vehicle, and that they should realign their criteria and their spending to make sure that the road is safe for the most vulnerable of road users. I mean, to me, it makes perfect sense. And yeah, I even point out to them, to which they never ever have a response, that the public roads that comprise the race circuit for the Northwest 200 racing event every summer here, that's exactly how they treat maintaining those roads. They maintain those roads very scrupulously to the point where they are safe for very fast-moving motorcycles. But they don't do it anywhere else. Everywhere else, they would never think of lashing down these shipping, for example, on a public road on the Northwest 200 circuit a week before the races. But they would do it anywhere else. But our roads authority are intransigent. I feel institutionally arrogant and disdainful. They don't like to be pointed out that they're wrong. They just simply don't like it, and I feel, they will prevaricate and maneuver so that they don't have to deal with it, or that eventually something will get done, but they'll never admit that it was done because someone like me pointed out they were wrong.
Yeah. They've classed us as vulnerable road users. They therefore admit that, yes, they need to take more care to make sure that they look after us as a vulnerable road user group, and yet they don't seem to put in the same funding to actually deliver that. So it'll be interesting to see whether, say, the promised meeting with ministers takes place. Obviously, you had your event there at the gates of Stormont, handed over your grievance letter, shall we say, and the latest update, I'm assuming, is that you're still waiting for the invitation.
Well, it is holidays here, so I don't expect anything to be happening until September at the earliest. And if the meeting doesn't take place, well, I'd be quite happy to make lots of noise about it. This was promised, and the minister promised to talk to us, to address our issues, and she hasn't. But hopefully she will. It's possible. I mean, in the last 10 years, they found £200 million to spend on enhancing on cycling schemes and enhancing safety and infrastructure for cyclists. Now, I'm not against that. No argument with cyclists. It's obviously needed, but they found £200 million over the last 10 years, and in the same period, and I have this in writing, they found exactly £0 to do anything that's significant for motorcyclists. So, over to you, officialdom.
Yes. Like I say, there's definite a very clear imbalance there, and it's time that we highlight it and push for a little bit more action. Remind them that yes, they refer to us as vulnerable road user groups, which means that they have a duty of care that they need to be fulfilling, and that basically comes down to where they invest money, doesn't it?
Yeah, and another point I make is that the department they publish these statistics. They gather the data and publish the statistics. They are aware of the problem. They're aware of it, at least statistically, if not in human terms. But yet they persist in doing nothing about it.
Yeah.
Except rehashing awareness videos on social media. And given that that's the report that I took figures from, it says that 50% of the killed and seriously injured collisions with motorcyclists in Northern Ireland are caused by other road users, principally car drivers. There's a lot of work to be done there, and that's another one of the concerns, if you like, that I put in the letter. But this is really where vulnerable road users can become a tool rather than a yoke or a cross.
That's it, yes. So yes, hopefully it is something that we can use to our collective benefit, and hopefully people will understand why we do use this terminology. It's not a suggestion that we're victims or that we want to be treated differently to anybody else. It's just a case of we want an equal opportunity to be staying safe on the road, as opposed to just being forgotten about and ignored. That's it. Right, that's great. Well, thanks very much for your time this afternoon, Martin. And hopefully we'll get a few comments from people on our YouTube channel saying whether or not they like the term, or they think that there should be a better term that we should be using. But ultimately, hopefully, everybody will understand why we do lean into it, shall we say, and make sure that we're using it to our advantage.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers.